Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This morning, I'm going to speak about Parashat Haazinu. It says in Devarim, in Deuteronomy 32:44, Moses came together with Joshua, son of Nun, and recited all the words of this poem in the hearing of the people. I know nothing touches the soul more than a good song or a good poem, and there are no better words to express what God told Moses. So I decided to read the words to you instead of putting them in my own words. Listen carefully and see if you can hear anything in these powerful words that will elucidate what the world is experiencing today. We all know the events in Israel and around the world, the floods, the fires, the uprisings. And keep in mind, as well, I'm reading, that Israel represents all humanity before the Creator. So here are the words that Moses spoke to us in this beautiful song. Listen well to my words, from the heights of the heavens to the lowest places on the earth. In the same way that dew freely rises from the ground to water the youngest of plants, may my words freely bring living water to your souls. For I cry out the name of Yud-He-Vav-He and attribute greatness to our God. He is the rock. His works are perfect. He's without guile, since all his ways are justice. He is a faithful God with no injustice in him. He is just and he is straight. His children, however, have become corrupt, a morally stained, twisted, and perverse generation. How will God deal with them? A people who have lost all common sense and wisdom. Isn't he the Father who created you, who fashioned and established you? Remember the days of old and consider the years of ages past. Ask your parents and the elderly. They will tell you that Elyon, the Most High God, apportioned the earth and set up the borders of every nation in accordance with Israel's numbers. The portion for Adonai, for Yud-He-Vav-He, is his people. God's own possession is Jacob. He formed them in the desert, in a howling wasteland. God made sure that their clothes and their sandals lasted 40 years and guarded them as the apple of his eye. Like the eagle that stirs up her nest and hovers over her young, so did God spread out his wings and carried them. God alone guided them without any foreign god. He flew them to the heights of the earth to feast on the produce of the field, and nursed them with honey from the rocks and oil from the flinty rock, with butter and milk from the choicest lambs, with rams of Bashan, male goats, and the finest of wheat, and where they drank wine from blood-red grapes. Then Yeshurun grew fat and kicked. You prospered, and you became thick and gross. They forsook the God who made them and spurned the rock of their support. They enraged God with foreign objects and vexed him with abominations. They sacrificed to the Sedim, to false gods that they had not known, new gods who were the latest fad, which your fathers did not recognize. You neglected and forgot the rock who gave birth to you. Yud-He-Vav-He saw and was vexed because his sons and daughters spurned him. God said, I will hide my face from them, and let's see how they end up, because they are a perverse generation, children who are unfaithful. They have roused me to jealousy with what are non-gods, provoked me with their vanities. So I will anger them with a non-people and irritate them with a foolish nation. For a fire has flared in my wrath and burned to the bottom of Sheol. It has consumed the earth and its produce and set ablaze the foundations of the mountains. I will sweep misfortunes on them and deplete my arrows on them. The wasting famine, ravaging plague, deadly pestilence, and the teeth of beasts will I loose upon them, with venomous crawling things of the dust. The sword shall deal death outdoors, as shall the terror indoors, to young man and virgin alike, the nursing baby as well as the aged. I thought that I would reduce them to nothing, make their memory cease from among mankind. Were it not that I dreaded the taunts of the adversaries and their enemies who might misjudge and say, our own hand has prevailed. None of this was fashioned by the Lord, by Yud, He, Vav, He. For they are a nation void of counsel, lacking in all discernment. If they were wise, they would understand this, gain insight into their future. How could one chase 1,000 or two put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had given them over and Yud, He, Vav, He had delivered them up? For their rock, small r, is not like our rock, capital R, had given them over, and Yud He Vav He had delivered them up. For their rock is not like our rock in our enemy's own judgment. For their vine is from Sodom, from the vineyards of Gomorrah. Their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the venom of serpents, the cruel poison of vipers. I have put it all away, sealed up in my storehouses. Vengeance is mine, and recompense at the time when their foot shall slip. Their day of calamity is near, and the things are to come upon them. Make haste. For the Eternal will vindicate God's people and avenge his servants when he sees that their might is gone, and neither slave nor free remains. It will be said, where are their gods, the rock in whom they sought refuge, who ate the fat of their offerings and drank their wines? Let them rise up and help you, and let them shield you. See now that I am he, and there is no God with me. I put to death, and I make alive. I have wounded, and I heal. No one can deliver from my hand. For I lift up my hand to heaven and say, as I live forever, when I sharpen my glittering sword and my hand takes hold of judgment, I will wreak vengeance on my foes. I will deal with those who hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and my soul shall devour flesh with the blood of the slain and the captives, from the long-haired chiefs of my enemy. O nations, sing aloud of God's people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants, wreak vengeance on his foes, and cleanse the land for his people. Wow. Did you recognize, did you hear the pattern of how God acts with his people? He begins by reminding us of who he is and then who we are. And he always refers back to the story of the Exodus and our 40 years in the desert when we had to fully depend on him. Nothing, our clothes, our sandals, nothing wore out. We had everything we needed. And then he set down the guidelines for a good relationship with him and warned us in detail of what would happen when we stray, when we go out from his protective covering. He calls us Yeshurun, another name for Israel, which means the upright one in Hebrew. Yashar, from Yashar. But Yeshurun grew fat and became thick and gross. And he warns us what would happen when we become prosperous, fat, prosperous, and we forget him. The issue is not about becoming prosperous. Our forefathers were prosperous. It's about forgetting him. God doesn't beat around the bush or try to assuage our delicate sensitivities. Thick has the connotation of being slow of minds and behavior. And kicking reminds us of a stubborn child who kicks when he doesn't want to do what he's told. God is reminding us that we are the ones who turned our backs on him. And we are the ones who constantly refuse to trust the rock who never turns his back on us. God is a loving father who is more interested in protecting his children from evil than in being accepted by us. So he allows us to reap the consequences of our behavior, of our disobedience. But once we've suffered enough and all our might is spent, he steps in and then he wreaks havoc upon our enemies, saying, "Vengeance is mine." Sounds like a very strange process. But if we look at the history of our people, the Jewish people, in every land we've lived, this is the exact formula. When will we ever learn? We may question why we're blamed for everything bad that happens on this earth, why the Jews are always blamed, especially because we're so small in number in comparison with every other nation. But this shows us just how important we are, what an impact we make. We're so important in the sight of God. We're called the apple of his eye. Not because of who we are, because of who he is. Yet we keep insisting that it is our strength, our might, our great army that will win the war that is being waged against us once again in the Middle East. It's because of him. I saw a variety of pictures and videos of the Sinai Desert this past week, and I was amazed how anyone could suffer even 1 week there, let alone 40 years. It took a supernatural intervention for that to be possible. And if we look at the map of Israel today, we are but a speck in the midst of our enemies. And it is taking a supernatural intervention to keep the Israelites, the modern day Israelis, alive, while hundreds of rockets are being launched at us from every generation, every direction. Verses 16 to 18 spoke to my soul. And it spoke about other gods, not turning to other gods like these Sidim. I had turned to many other gods in my youth. When it says they sacrificed to Sidim, they translated this as demons, but it could refer to the Assyrian winged bull god, Sedu. All our prophets warned us about the consequences of playing the harlot with foreign gods, with other nations, or with the latest ideologies or fads. We are a naturally curious and spiritual people. He put that in us. But he's also reminding us not to turn our backs on him, the only God who can cover us with his protective wings. No statue of a winged bull can cover us. Only he can. It's hard to explain to someone who doesn't read the Torah about what has happened to our people over the ages, why all these things have happened to us. And it becomes so easy for us to blame God or blame the other nations. But the Torah is explicit. It's so clear. It lays the blame where it belongs. And we have to admit our part in it. We are just before Yom Kippur, and it's the perfect time for doing just that, for admitting our part in all that's going on. Who are the unfaithful children? We may think that we're good, we're religious, we're a holy people. But why does the Torah tell us that we're the opposite? It's no different than any other religion, including Rabbinic Judaism. Every religion has turned its back on the written Torah, telling us that we need to rely on their commentaries and the interpretation of their esteemed sages in all the religions. Why? Perhaps it's because man doesn't want to hear God's simple truth. We prefer our truth, even though we complicate everything. God separated the people Israel from the nations, beginning with Abraham, choosing them for a very special purpose. We were to be the example of what it is like to be protected by a loving Father, to be given guidelines that would bring life and not death. Adam and Eve showed us the consequences of breaking the one guideline that they were given. Now we're living the consequences of breaking the 10 given to us at Mount Sinai. We all need to turn back to these. Being chosen has nothing to do with the value of a person or a nation, because we are all equal in God's eyes. He created us all. But because of our disobedience to our calling, we read in Haazinu that God threatened to replace us with a people who are considered to be fools. Being foolish denotes a lack of wisdom, and wisdom can only come from God and His Torah. At the end of the portion, before Moses ascends Mount Nebo to die, he made this farewell plea to his people. Take to heart all the words which I have warned you this day. Order your children to faithfully observe all the terms of this Torah, for this is not a trivial thing for you. It is your very life. Through it you shall long endure on the land that you are to possess upon crossing the Jordan. It's the same today as it was when Moses spoke these words to our people. Today is Shabbat Shuvah, the Sabbath of returning to Him. Not to ourselves, as some say, but returning to God and His Torah. As we enter His Moedim, the season of God's appointed times, let us search our hearts. Let us do true teshuvah. Let us return to the mighty God of Israel who gave birth to us. Let us turn to His Torah and learn how to apply it to our lives. The instructions are all there. Then we can watch what the Lord of the armies will do to protect us from our enemies. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.